Hello and welcome to NewsX World. I'm Joshua Barnes. In the latest turn of events, after Pakistan violated the ceasefire, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is holding a crucial security meeting today with the three service chiefs and CDS Anil Chauhan at his residence. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and NSA Ajit Doval are also attending the meeting. Meanwhile, a wreath-laying ceremony with full force honours will take place at the Frontier headquarters in Jammu at 12 p.m. Indian Standard Time today to pay tribute to Sub-Inspector MD Imtiaz of the 07 Battalion BSF. Imtiaz was killed when his units came under intense Pakistani firing along the international border in the RS Pura sector. And lastly, the situation in Amritsar remains calm and stable, according to the Deputy Commissioner. While offices remain closed as usual on Sunday, markets are open and daily activities are going on without disruption. This, of course, following the announcement of the ceasefire between Pakistan and India yesterday, coming into force at 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Well, joining us first to discuss the ongoing situation between India and Pakistan, provocations and peace, is Ross Feingold, a political risk analyst, joining us from Taipei. Ross, thank you for joining us once again after speaking to us earlier in the programme. We're looking at a ceasefire deal which has been commended by Donald Trump, commended by world leaders, but also with an urging of calmness and de-escalation continuing following action that we've seen. What's your reaction to the world's reaction to this announced ceasefire?
Clearly, the recent tensions between India and Pakistan, starting with the terrorist attack launched from Pakistan, it has gotten world attention. And we know one of the primary reasons for that is not simply because it's adding to the conflicts that are ongoing around the world, but also because they're two nuclear powers. So a lot of countries took an interest in trying to persuade the two sides to step back. There was 72 hours ago, it seemed like the United States was not interested in mediating, but then it turned out that the United States did take a heavy interest in mediating this, the U.S. having an excellent relationship with the Modi administration in India. And the United States was able to convince the two sides to take a step back. And I think there was some relief around the world when that news broke. But now there's a lot of blame being apportioned on who's broken the ceasefire. And obviously it seems that this is the Pakistani side that has broken the ceasefire.
Yes, Ross, we do have some information coming in that I would like to bring to you right now. NewsX World is getting exclusive source-based information on why Pakistan rushed for a ceasefire. As per sources, Pakistan Defence Network spread high alert messages their nuclear command and control infrastructure was next on India's target. Pakistan feared strikes on strategic installations in Rawalpindi. This, of course, a huge development that we've got in here at NewsX World, directly from sources based within Pakistan. Madhav Nalapat also joining us this hour on this discussion. Professor Nalapat, I would like to get your opinion and your thoughts on that breaking news we've just brought.
Look, to be frank with you, I mean, I don't know about the relationship between the leadership of the United States and India, but the people of India are very disappointed in the United States. The people of India have, we have seen what China has done. China has given full support to Pakistan. I mean, its footprint is all over the place. There's no question that they have been giving total support to Pakistan. China, frankly, is in a state of what I call Cold War 2.0 with the US. It's in the fundamental interest of the US to see that a Chinese proxy, namely Pakistan, does not prevail over the world's most populous democracy, and instead of which you take a transactional view. I'm up for auction. Anybody who bids higher will get me. That kind of a situation does not befit the world's preeminent power, which the United States still is, which is under grave challenge from China. Frankly, I think many of us had had really expected that the Trump administration would give to India what China is doing to Pakistan very openly. And the Trump administration has done nothing of the kind. I mean, for example, it offered us weapons at market prices. I mean, well, let's say, for example, in World War II, the British were in mortal danger and the Russians were in mortal danger. You had Roosevelt reaching out to Russia and to Britain and to handing out arms to them. He didn't ask, pay the money first, but until I see it in the Federal Reserve, I'm not going to give you anything. He didn't ask that. And finally, the World War was won. Now, frankly, this is the Cold War 2.0. This is not the way to win it. The United States cannot afford to be so transactional when the next 2 or 3 years is going to be crucial. And China is smiling away, smiling away. And now it's having talks with the US today on
Yes.
tariffs. I mean, US trade deficit with China is horrific. Do you think the Chinese are going to want to reduce that deficit when their economy itself is very badly affected by unemployment? Now is the time, for example, China is hitting on the ropes, instead of which the US gives it a breather. When Pakistan was on the ropes, India was about to deliver a knockout punch. The United States steps in and saves Pakistan. Now, frankly, I don't understand it. All I can say, frankly, is that, I mean, now, frankly, it's very clear the Pakistanis are not at all sincere about a ceasefire. When they get the chance, they will attack again. Then there'll be a pause. Then there'll be an attack. I mean, they'll be worn out sooner rather than we will. But the fact is, now I think, frankly, it's time for us to forget the pause button. And frankly, even if our American friends tell us, please lay off, for whatever transactional reasons the top level of the United States has, we have to ignore it. We
Yes.
can't afford to be transactional when an existential conflict is at stake. The Americans are transactional when existential conflict is at stake.
Yes,
Trump-
Professor Nalapat, sorry to interrupt. I want to build on your point of the United States because we've just had some more breaking information in that I would like to inform our audience on. As per sources, Pakistan reached out to the United States for urgent intervention after this panic over claimed impending Indian strikes. Washington was already in touch with both sides but stepped in, anticipating tensions. Of course, this earlier news that we just broke you about an impending strike from India, which we have received from sources within Pakistan regarding the nuclear arsenal of Pakistan. Adit Qatari, a foreign affairs expert, joining us from New Delhi. I will come to you next. Given the fact that we've just understood that the Pakistanis got in contact with the Americans as soon as this strike became apparent, why do you think then there were further violations last night as reported by the Ministry of External Affairs?
Thanks for having me, Josh. I'd like to echo Professor Nalapat's thought, and I'd like to say that the Indian people in general are quite sick and tired of the way the Pakistanis behave. Pakistan is a state being the epicenter of terrorism, where India becomes the first casualty of Pakistani-sponsored terrorism. Having said that, your question as to why the Pakistanis would have gone to the United States and what would have transpired, I can only imagine that they would have threatened the Americans to say that if the Indians were to attack our military facilities and installations, we would have no choice but to sell out the nuclear secrets to other countries like Iran or maybe North Korea. That kind of threaten, and those are the kind of threats that would have maybe compelled America to have a discussion with New Delhi and bring everybody onto a table and sort of mediate that sort of a truce or a mutual understanding of a ceasefire at this point. But I don't think the Pakistanis are going to be living up to the ceasefire. I mean, we've already seen yesterday after the announcement, right after 3 hours, we saw them violate first, and it was a coordinated effort. It wasn't just one of on the border area of a particular district. It was all throughout the western borders of India, and it was fairly well coordinated. So you know for a fact that somebody high up within the GHQ in Rawalpindi had been directing these. Now, whether the question is that Asif Munir, or is it some other generals who do not have faith in Asif Munir's capabilities anymore? And that's a question which I think the Pakistani people need to ask of their establishment. But all in all, I see there is some sort of a sinister plan that the Pakistanis must be hatching, which is why the Americans were basically brought in to sort of mediate that sort of a truce. Josh.
Yes, and we bring you some more updates on these conversations between Pakistan and the United States. Again, as per sources, the United States, while maintaining a neutral posture in public, gave a firm message to Islamabad to de-escalate without further delay. The US practically order the Pakistani side to activate military hotline and de-escalate. It's clear, Ross Feingold, that the message from the US was clear in the face of a series of provocations. This, of course, following the initial provocation, which was the devastating terror attack in Pahalgam. If our sources are to be believed, which of course we wouldn't be bringing you this information unless we thought so, the US have clearly looked at this and decided who the aggressor is. Do you agree?
Yes, I think the United States knows who the aggressor is in this situation. They know where the terrorists come from. They know who supports the terrorists. But I think to be fair to the Trump administration, they're dealing with several hot spots around the world at the moment. Obviously, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, and Hamas in Gaza. And President Trump is about to make his trip to the Middle East. And I think the appetite for another war around the world was really very small in the Trump administration, which I think is why Secretary Rubio was talking to both sides and asking them both to escalate rather than taking India's specific side in this situation.
Yes, Madhav Nalapat, editor of the Sunday Guardian. I will come back to you now. It seems that along the line of control and the international border, normalcy has resumed this morning. Given the fact that there has been such uncertainty for those living in Jammu, Kashmir, Punjab, Gujarat, in certain areas, how do you think this path will be navigated by those people and also the authorities there, given the fact that a ceasefire has been put in place, but ultimately we've seen further escalation following that 5 p.m. installation?
Joshua, let me tell you that war today, you got it through the internet, through cyber war, disinformation war, misinformation war, and all those wars are in full swing. I'm very certain that there are terror modules within India who are primed to strike, and various other modules. And the epicenter of all this is Pakistan. So very frankly, let's be honest, this is a pause. This is not a stop. It may not even be a long-term stop. It certainly was not. The ceasefire fell apart in a very short time, which showed exactly what the Chinese, who basically now are ordering the Pakistanis around, what they think of the United States. I mean, Trump, he should look at and check. Here is a country. And then, of course, you've got these reports that both India and Pakistan, that's the tune the New York Times is singing. Look, for heaven's sake, you have, I mean, frankly, video. Even a lay person like me has accessed that video in which the exact times are shown. And it's very clear Pakistan started it. Very, very clear that Pakistan started it. So very frankly, I mean, we should put those videos out there. We should present them there, present them to the public also. There's no need to hoard information. You have to make that information public. Let the Indian people know who was the aggressor. And let the world know who was the aggressor. So anybody who says, oh, both sides intensify the conflict will be proved wrong by hard videographic evidence. Frankly, our communication strategy has been, I mean, I don't know, government to government, it may be perfect, but people to people, it's not been very good. With the result, there's hardly any sympathy for India. You've got a theocracy attacking a democracy. You have an autocratic state run by the military attacking an elected government. And if you look at the chatter, the whole chatter, and 3/4 of them, if not more, support Pakistan. Is that genuine or is it artificial? Look at the chatter in the United States. They're alive against Trump. Look at I mean, this is a front in the war. We have multiple fronts in this war. One front may be inactive, other fronts will be active. And the only way to prevent it is to end the terror machine. It's for the whole world. You remember, Joshua, 9/11. My wife and I were a very short distance away from 9/11 at what is then called the Lexington Hotel. And we walked out on the road and we saw the debris coming and everything else. So the reality is, for us, it's very real. I was in Mumbai, again, a few hundred yards from the 26/11 attack, from the Trident Hotel, was under attack. And we heard bursts of gunfire. We heard, the kind of flashes of light that indicated a particular kind of fire. I've seen all that firsthand. I don't want to see that in my country again. And if you have to endure 2 or 3 weeks of tough times, it's better than enduring 2 or 3 generations of tough times. How many generations in India since 1947 have endured tough times? Never knowing when the terror attack is going to come, never knowing when the mall you're visiting will be attacked, never knowing where the cinema you're seeing they'll be rocked by an explosion. We're sick and tired of that. We want to end that, and it should be ended in this generation. And frankly, we are expecting Prime Minister Modi to do so. An on-off switch suits Pakistan and very much suits China because it tires India out. India can no longer be a competitor for any decoupling from China. So there's no major competitor for decoupling from China. And so China hopes to prevent a lot of that decoupling from taking place because India has to find its feet. Now, if you have an on-off situation, who's going to come? Once and for all, let me tell you, this has got to be settled, Joshua. For the sake of my country, for the sake of our 1.4 billion people, for the sake of the credibility of the leadership, it's got to be settled once and for all. You go through a certain amount of pain for a few weeks, and frankly, you ensure that future generations are rescued from the pain that all of us have endured.
Yes, Professor Nalapat, sorry to cut you off once again. We are getting some breaking information in, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is chairing a meeting at his residence. He meets tri-service chiefs, of course, amid the ongoing tensions and also the ongoing escalations, though amid a ceasefire agreement that has been reached. The visuals we are showing you now are from the meeting which has taken place. My apologies, these are deferred visuals, but I understand that the meeting is taking place with these tri-service chiefs. These visuals from a similar meeting which took place yesterday. Just getting confirmation, these are now the images from today. So similar faces, of course, involved in these discussions, serious discussions following a peace agreement, but also amid uncertainty over the fragile ceasefire that has been agreed. Just to confirm, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi chairs a key meeting at his residence, meeting tri-service chiefs and other members of his government. Let's move back to our discussion now. I'd like to come to you, Ross Feingold, to look at the wider situation now in Pakistan and a potential global reaction. We saw the terrorist attack in Pelgam on the 22nd of April, 26 innocent lives. Civilians killed after being asked what religion they were, after being asked to recite the Quran. Of course, we have spoken briefly in this discussion about the Mumbai terror attacks, Professor Nalapat detailing those. Do you think the wider political and world leaders should be looking at Pakistan, where, of course, Osama bin Laden was being kept in Pakistan for a time. What response do you think the global community needs to give to the rising concern of terrorism within Pakistan?
It's an excellent question, because one thing we know is that the threat from jihadi terrorism still exists around the world, whether that's in East Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia, in the Middle East, in Europe, and towards the United States, or targets that represent American interests around the world. So the threat from jihadi terrorism has not gone away, and it's entering its roughly 30 years already that we're in this situation. But I think one thing to keep in mind, at least when it comes to priorities, clearly the Western European governments, their priority at the moment is Ukraine. We saw the meeting within the past 24 hours of several Western European leaders in Kiev talking about a ceasefire. They're really focused on that. They're not focused on the jihadi terrorism threat at the moment, which I think is unfortunate.
Yes, Adit Qatari, coming back to you now. Of course, the situation is fragile, the ceasefire, but we now will, of course, be looking forward. China, a key factor in, of course, discussions. The Foreign Ministry saying that de-escalation must be explored and stuck to, and also, of course, diplomatic conversations instead of military action. What role could China play in these discussions, of course, with their allegiances to Pakistan?
From a Chinese perspective, I think the ceasefire was in their interest, because the way the Indian military, the armed forces dismantled Chinese military tech, a lot of their customers would be thinking otherwise of buying, from China in the future of any armed any arms and ammunitions. Frankly, their anti-missile systems and their JF-17s haven't performed all that well. And, African countries and the Southeast Asian countries were watching this particular skirmish with a lot of indulgence, primarily because they have orders in place, which now are going into hold. So from Chinese perspective, I think that's where we are at. But from an Indian and Pakistani perspective, Josh, I'd like to, further Professor Nalapat's argument and say that, India may have won the battle, but I think the narrative war sits with the Pakistanis. I think the way they have played out the narrative war, especially within Pakistan and the global community, goes to demonstrate that, right from 1948 to 1965 to 71 and 99, they know exactly how to woo the global community, which is why there is a mindless kind of a blind spot when it comes to the Pakistan-sponsored terrorism globally. I mean, we all know for a fact, you mentioned it, that Osama bin Laden was found in the United States, but despite that, India was not allowed to go after the perpetrators of the 26/11, primarily because you had American boots on the ground. So it's situations like that which sort of restricts our ability to go after the Pakistani terrorists and their the brainchild of terrorism, which is the GHQ, which is basically the Pakistani military situated in Rawalpindi, which basically manifests all of this terrorism, uses asymmetrical warfare, which is a fancy term used for terrorism against other countries. No other country does this, Josh. I mean, it's perplexing how the global community they don't really have an action plan when it comes to dealing with Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. Josh?
Yes, absolutely. Adit Qatari, Ross Feingold and Professor Madhav Nalapat, thank you very much for joining us. Just briefly building on those comments there from Adit, of course there has been a clear policy shift. India saying that any act of terrorism is now an act of war. Of course, we hope it doesn't come to that. But we will be across all of the developments as they happen, as Narendra Modi, of course, chairs that meeting with senior officials. All the updates will be here on NewsX World. Until then, thank you.